What's going on, everybody? American Football Network here today. And today we are bringing you our 2023 SEC quarterback rankings. But before we get started, make sure you guys like and subscribe, comment those thoughts and opinions down below. Help me reach that goal of 850 subs by the end of May. We're getting kind of close to it. Let's see if we can get there. If not, let's definitely hit that mark by June. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of July. So, let's see if we can get there and hit that goal. That way we can get monetized before the start of the college football season. And make sure you check out the description for links to the podcast, the website, and our college football roundup channel. I appreciate all of the support that we've seen as a channel. But let's go ahead and get started with today's video as we are previewing our SEC quarterbacks for the upcoming season. So number 14, we have A.J. Swann, the quarterback from Vanderbilt. Last year, 115 to 198, 58.1% completion percentage, 1,274 yards, 10 touchdowns, 2 picks, 126.8 rating. And he saw about half the snaps last year for Vanderbilt. I think this is the guy that is going to have a solid season. Vanderbilt returns a lot. I think he could move up in this list, but I do think that for now he has to be at number 14. At number 13, I have Brady Cook, the quarterback from Missouri, 248 of 383, 64.8 completion percentage last year, 2,739 yards, 14 touchdowns, 7 picks, 133.2 rating. Brady Cook is a guy that I think could end up being like 8 or 9 on this list. I just think the interceptions need to go down a little bit and the touchdowns need to go up, but the completion percentage is really good. I just think he needs a better touchdown to interception ratio than 2-1 to move up. And for now, I think this is where you got to put him at as number 13. So number 12, I have Graham Mertz, the quarterback from Florida. This is a guy who was a 5-star coming out of high school, went to Wisconsin. And now we'll see if it was Wisconsin that was holding him back or if Graham Mertz just couldn't live up to the hype. He's going to Florida, going to be with Billy Napier. Last year was a 164, 286, 57.3 completion percentage, 2,136 yards, 19 touchdowns, 10 picks, and a rating of 135. This is a guy that, like I said, many people say Wisconsin has held him back. But now in Florida, in the SEC, in a team that's not going to just run the ball at, 75% of the time, what are you going to look like? How are you going to play? And I think that is the big thing with Graham Mertz. And so I'm interested to see what he does with Florida and Billy Napier this year. Another thing is, what would he have done with Fickle in Wisconsin? I think that is interesting too. Another thing to think about is him with Fickle in Wisconsin. Maybe he made a bad move by going to Florida. We'll have to see how it plays out. But at number 11, we have Payton Thorne, the quarterback from Auburn. Last year for Michigan State, he was 242 of 387, 62.5 completion percentage, 2,679 yards, 19 touchdowns, 11 picks, 131.2 passer rating. Payton Thorne, a guy who's going to be coming down, probably going to be Hugh Freeze, his quarterback. Maybe he doesn't win the job, but I think that he probably will. He's the most experienced of the group down there, and he also has, in my opinion, the most talent out of the Auburn quarterback room. And so I think Payton Thorne is probably going to be the starter for Auburn. And I think that he ranks 11 right now, just coming off of a rougher year last year and coming into a new system after the spring game. So he's missing out on the spring. So we'll see what he does. I think he's a guy that could move up. If he plays like he did in 2021 with Michigan State, this is a guy that could be, he could finish like 7, maybe even like 6 or 5 on this list, probably around in the 7 or 8 range if he plays like he did in 2021. So a guy with a lot of talent, just got to put it all together with Auburn. Number 10, I know the Georgia fans are going to come after me on this one, but I have Carson Beck, the quarterback for Georgia last year, 26 of 35, 74.3 per completion percentage, 310 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks, 186.4 passer rating. And he mainly came in and just mop up time against teams as he was behind Stetson Bennett all year. And I think he's talented, but I don't like he's never done anything. So I don't think it's fair to say, okay, he's talented, he's on Georgia, let's put him at, number 3 or something like that. I think there's guys on this list that are all ahead of him that I think are more talented and better than he is. And I'm not the biggest fan of Carson Beck, but I also don't think he's going to be bad because I think with the talent that Georgia has, it's pretty much impossible for him to just be bad. And I think he's pretty talented himself. I think he's a guy that could move up and be a top 7 QB in the league. But I think if I'm ranking him right now, he's number 10 on this list. At number 9, I have Tyler Buchner for Alabama being reunited with Tommy Rees down there. Last year was 46 of 83, 55.4 completion percentage, 651 yards, 3 touchdowns, 5 picks, 121.2 passer rating. Buchner only played in 3 games last year: the Ohio State game, the Marshall game, and the South Carolina Bowl game, because he was injured in the Marshall game, and that took him out for the rest of the season except for the final game of the year. Drew Pine stepped in to fill in for Buchner. But I think Buchner is, and I'm probably going to get, yelled at, especially from the Georgia fans, for having Buchner over Beck. And they're, well, what has Buchner done? Well, what has Buchner done? Well, I think Buchner's more talented. Neither one of them have done anything, but Buchner has the more talent and may have the better receiver room. Obviously, Beck will have the tight end and Brock Bowers, who's the best receiving tight end in the country. But Buchner will probably have the better actual receivers in Alabama. So I think I have Buchner one spot ahead of him. Once again, I think both of these guys could potentially finish anywhere on this list because they're so unproven and we don't know much about any of them. At number 8, Jaxson Dart, the quarterback for Ole Miss. Last year was 226 at 362, 62.4 completion percentage, 2,974 yards, 20 touchdowns, 11 picks, 143.6 passer rating. And Jaxson Dart is a guy, in my opinion, that is going to take that next step with Lane Kiffin. I think Dart is a guy that could potentially finish top 5 in the league this coming season. I like Dart. I think he's very talented, has a lot of tools to work with. He does lose his biggest passing threat in Jonathan Mingo, but Ole Miss is still talented. They've been top 10 in the country in offense the last 3 or 4 years, and so I expect nothing less from Dart to keep that up. This one is a little bit of I think whoever the Ole Miss quarterback is going to be here at 8, Spencer Sanders, I think is pretty close to this spot too, the transfer from Oklahoma State. He's in there. So I think that QB battle is between those two. So whichever one wins it, I think they'll rank 8. Or at least 8 is how I would rank them right now. So Jaxson Dart or just the Ole Miss QB room. Number 7, Connor Weigman, Texas A&M. Last year, 73 of 132, 55.3 completion percentage, 896 yards, 8 touchdowns, no picks, 132.3 passer rating. Connor Weigman is a guy who I think is really going to step it up. He played in 5 games last year. 4 of those games were SEC games. They beat LSU, in which he started in the last game of the season in the rivalry game for him. And I think the A&M has a lot of talent, obviously, and I think Weigman is a guy who can really lead them at the quarterback position. I think he's very talented, and I think if his receivers on the outside step up and they play good for him, I think that he's a guy that could be a top 5 quarterback in this league. I think Weigman is very talented, and I think he has all the pieces around him to succeed. Question is, will A&M as a whole put it all together? At number 6, I have Devin Leary, the quarterback from Kentucky. Last year with NC State, he only played in 6 games because he had a shoulder injury in the Florida State game. but last year he was 118 of 193, 61.1 completion percentage, 1,265 yards, 11 touchdowns, 4 picks, 130.9 passer rating. And I think Leary is a guy who, could move up and be a top 3 quarterback in this league. I just have him at 6 right now because I'm a little uncertain with, one, him moving into a new system with new players. I don't necessarily like Kentucky's talent on the outside, receiving-wise. And he's coming off of an injury that ended his season last year, a shoulder injury on his throwing arm, I believe. And so that is something that is going to have to be watched. But again, I think he could jump a few of the guys that I have ahead of him, and end up going back. But I think Devin Leary is a very good quarterback. I expect him to have a good year. How good, we'll have to wait and see. Number 5, Spencer Rattler from South Carolina, 264, 399 last year, 66.2% completion percentage, 3,026 yards, 18 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 138.7 passer rating. Again, this is a guy who I think is going to be very good. But I think he needs a better touchdown to interception ratio than what he has right now. He's got to be more consistent throughout the season and play more like he did in the last 3 games than like he did in the first 7. And then he really kind of started getting better. But he's got to be more consistent this year if South Carolina wants to go anywhere. And for him to finish 5, he has to be more consistent. But still, not a bad year last year. Just again, more consistent, and the interceptions have to go down. At number 4, I have Joe Milton, the quarterback for Tennessee, 53 of 82 last year, 64.6%, 971 yards, 10 touchdowns, no picks, 204.3 passer rating. He had a great game against Clemson in the Orange Bowl. He threw 3 touchdowns, close to up over 300 yards, I think. So very good game for him in that one. And if he plays like that this year, he will be a top 5 quarterback in the SEC, a potential Heisman guy. I think Tennessee has all the talent around him for him to succeed. I think he has developed a lot more than his days at Michigan. And so I think Joe Milton is a guy who could come in and really shine in this Tennessee offense, as he came in and started and then was benched for Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker had a great career at Tennessee, and now it's Milton's turn to take back over. And I think Milton's going to have a great season and lead Tennessee to another, top 15, top 10 finish. Number 3, I have Will Rogers from Mississippi State. Last year was 415 of 610, 68% completion percentage, 3,974 yards, 35 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 130.1 passer rating. I think Will Rogers is probably the guy who could jump up to number 1, probably the lowest down that could jump up to number 1. I don't think anybody behind him is going to move up to number 1. I think this is where it kind of cuts off. I think these 3 quarterbacks, Rogers and then who I have at number 2 and number 1, are on a higher level than the guys below them. I think Joe Milton is just on the doorstep of that level, but I think the rest of the guys from there on, there's a big gap from 5 and back. And Rodgers had a great year, especially statistically last year. We'll see if those numbers keep up, as we'll have to see what goes on with Mississippi State after the passing of Mike Leach. He's no longer their coach, obviously. And so will the air raid system still be in place at Mississippi State? Who's going to take over? And what will their offense look like? But I think regardless of all that, Will Rogers is still the number 3 quarterback. I mean, to throw 8 interceptions and 610 pass attempts is just incredible, especially when you have 35 touchdowns on top of that, 4,000 yards, completing 68% of your passes. That is just incredible. I think Rodgers will have another very good season this year. So now at number 2, I have KJ Jefferson, the Arkansas quarterback. I think, again, he's a guy that could take over that number 1 spot. Last year, 204 of 300, 68% completion, 2,648 yards, 24 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 165.2 passer rating, and a big threat in the run game as well, as he really carried Arkansas last year. And I expect Arkansas just as a team to have a bounce-back year than what they did last year. And I think Jefferson's going to be a big part of that. I think he's going to have a big year yet again for Sam Pittman and the Hogs, and I expect KJ Jefferson to be a top 3 quarterback in the SEC this year. And now number 1, I don't think you can deny it as of right now. I think in the end of the season he could be passed by 1 or 2 guys, either Jefferson or Rodgers or maybe both. But I see it unlikely. I think Daniels is the best quarterback in the SEC. He's one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the SEC, really in the country. Last year he was 266 at 388, 68.6 completion percentage, 2,913 yards, 17 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 144.5 passer rating. He also had 186 carries for 885 yards, 4.8 yards a carry, and 11 touchdowns. So Daniels was a big threat for LSU last year. I think his passing touchdowns need to come up, but 17 touchdowns to 3 interceptions is not bad by any means. That's almost a 6-to-1 ratio, touchdown interception ratio, which is very good. And I think in year 2 with Brian Kelly and this new offense, I think that they're gonna really take another step forward. And I think this is a team that could potentially be in the college football playoff in just year 2 under Brian Kelly. I'm excited to see what LSU does, and I think Daniels is the best quarterback in the SEC and going to be a big part of that. But that wraps today's video up. I appreciate all of you guys watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Help me reach that goal of 850 subscribers by the end of May. Once again, I appreciate all the support that I've been getting from you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time with our Pac-10 or Pac-12 quarterback